Today, we're looking at Diamine's Mediterranean Blue. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, Diamine's Mediterranean Blue is a blue ink. To make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I put the ink into a different pen for a day. I then put it into a Nemosine Singularity with a fine nib to take my notes for this video. Now, before we get to the writing samples, let's look at the sciencey bits. Up first is a chromatography, and I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And this is not a true blue. We see this very light purpley tone across the bottom, very light. But then the blue pushes up and it becomes a much darker blue at the top. The one on the right, I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. Now that purpley line across the bottom, and it's a very light purple, it's much darker and much more there, but the blue pushes up just the same. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it might be to clean from your pens. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, it handles it very well. That extra fine only becomes about a fine. You do expect some spread on many inks because they're not marketed as waterproof. It's completely readable, completely usable. I would feel confident using this as a note taker. Water reactivates, lifts much of the ink, but leaves a lot of that light blue behind. Now, pen flush did everything water did and a bit more. You easily start to see the white of the paper coming through, meaning pen flush is the most you would need to clean this out of your pens. Bleach, as would be expected, obliterates it, but there's no need for that 1/3 bleach solution. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Diamine's Mediterranean Blue has a viscosity of 3, making it a drier ink. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples done on Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper with the extra fine and medium nibs. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Diamine's Mediterranean Blue has an average dry time of 17 seconds. Not just normal, average. Now, let's look at the writing samples. I picked this ink up in sample form, and to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at Clairfontaine. We have no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade. It is a lovely blue. It's kind of gentle in its color. Makes me want to start thinking about, if it was a little lighter, it would be like a baby blue. Extra fine is a slightly lighter tone, as in it just lets us see some of the lighter tones that are available. The extra fine has no feather, spread, halo, sheen. It offers little bits of shading. The FO is a little lighter than the X in Fox. The OV is a little lighter than the ER in Over. There's lighter spots in Quick, but that's about it. But it does offer little bits of it. 11 seconds to dry. The medium goes right with the extra fine in tone. It's really right the same. The medium has no feather, spread, halo, sheen. It offers little bits of shading. We see it in Fox where it goes from a little lighter and then it gets darker again. We see it with Lazy where the Y looks slightly lighter than the rest of Lazy. We see it in the word Dry where the Y looks slightly lighter than the rest. So there's spots of it, just not lots of it. 16 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby for both shows a little bit of color variation. We saw even less up here. And the smear test you could likely recover if you smeared while you were writing. Rhodia. Tomoe River. We get no bleeding, This spot that comes through is during the scrubby, and I'm putting it on stupid thick, and so sometimes that's bound to happen. There's ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade. The extra fine, a lighter tone than we got with the 1.1. It had no feather, spread, halo, sheen. We lost any of the shading that could exist. With this ink here, 18 seconds to dry. The medium gets to become a slightly darker tone again, but it's really in the middle. These two are not far separated, but this one's slightly lighter than the 1.1. So while they're not far apart, this shows how many tones can exist between even two colors that are fairly close, or two tones of a color that are fairly close. The medium has no feather spread, halo sheen, almost no shading to be seen. There is spots. The Fox starts a little lighter, it gets a little darker. The Quick has a light area in it at the Q to U. The O and over slightly lighter. It took 24 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us no color variation. We really almost got none. And the smear test you would not recover if you smeared this while you were writing. Rhodia. Rhodia gave us no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 gave no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. It's funny, I don't like it on the Rhodia paper, but I took my notes with a Nemosine Singularity, a very dry pen, and it looks much better there. I actually see a lot of shading in the writing that's not coming through on camera. Nope, not coming through at all on camera. I see much more shading, like on shoes, on the H, looks much darker. We're just not getting it on camera at all. It's not a heavy shading ink. I think it looks nicer with a dry pen. These are a little bit wetter. So, it is. Whatever it is. We're on the medium. The medium had no feather spread, halo sheen, no shading at all in this writing. No, I'm wrong there. The Q, again, little bits. Little bits. The Q's got a light area. There's almost nothing else. It's, I don't know, 17 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us no color variation. We really didn't get any color variation. And the smear test, you might be able to recover it. I know I redid the medium, and I'm sorry. Looking at what happens on yellow Rhodia. Of course we get no bleeding, no ghosting, but what happens to the color of this ink with a yellow background? This shows us this is much more transparent ink because of how the yellow tone paper affected the color of this ink. Look at how nice this is. This is a great teal right here. This is a fantastic teal. All of them turned a teal color, so it is not a super opaque, not a super dense ink. And I think that this has a nice effect on the yellow paper. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, nicer color. The extra fine is a noticeably lighter tone with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade whatsoever. 13 seconds to dry. The medium goes to that same mid-tone that we see between the extra fine and the 1.1. It has no feather spread, halo sheen. That tiny one or two spots of shading we saw before are gone. 17 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us, well, the scrubby, the extra fine shows us a little color variation and we did not get it. The medium shows us none and we got none, but the smear test, I think you could recover it if you smeared it. So black and red notebook, no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1, no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shade. It's a nice blue. It's a good basic blue. It's not screaming at you as a blue, but it's kind of just blue. The extra fine is a noticeably lighter tone with no feather spread, halo, sheen, no shading in here at all. Not even on my normally dark letters. You look at X and Fox, that's normally my darkest letter. It doesn't happen at all. The K and Quick, nothing. 8 seconds to dry. Now the medium goes to a much darker tone, back to what we saw with the 1.1. The medium has no feather spread, halo, sheen, or shade. It took 11 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine shows us some color variation, but it lied because it was not up here. The medium showed us none and we got none. And the smear test, you'd probably be able to recover this if you smeared while you were writing. Limon paper, who has had a lot of trouble. Now there's a couple bleed spots. Ignoring where the scrubby occurs, there are a couple of bleed spots that do occur here, where you see it seeping much heavier into the page. This would not stop you from using the back of the page. That's pretty good. And we get no ghosting. Way to go, Limon. You got one. I think that's 2 in a row for you. Careful. That's how streaks get started. The 1.1. It has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. I don't like how it looks here. The extra fine is a noticeably lighter tone with no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shade, 6 seconds to dry, which is pretty nice. The medium goes back to the tone that we got with the 1.1. The medium has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade. It took 9 seconds to dry. So the dry times here are super manageable if this was a notebook you were using with this ink. The scrubby for both show us no color variation. We didn't expect it. We didn't get it. And the smear test, you could likely recover this if you smeared while you were writing. And that is all that I have for the writing sample. Instead of finding inks that look like Diamine's Mediterranean Blue, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. This is a very bright, vivid blue. I wanted something a little dustier, a little more muted. I chose Birmingham Pen Company's George Westinghouse Alternator Crimson because this is a great red-brown ink. Before I give my opinion on this ink, I would ask, if you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And if it's your first time here, I would invite you to subscribe. So what do I think of Diamine's Mediterranean Blue? This is a great blue ink. It performs perfectly fine. The only thing that comes to happen is with so many blue inks to choose from, you would have to ask if this is the blue that you would want. Now this is not the blue for me, but this is a great blue. Now with that, if you put this in a drier pen, like a dry stub, you really do bring out some of the shading that this ink has to offer, but in your wetter pens, you really start to lose it. So depending on what you want and what type of pens you like, would depend on if this is the right ink for you. Thanks for watching.